Welcome to our deep dive into the history of Christmas. You might think you know everything about this holiday, but trust me, there's a whole lot more to it than meets the eye. We're going to be looking at a fascinating article from History.com. It's going to take us on a journey through time, uncovering the surprising origins and evolution of all those beloved Christmas traditions.
Yeah, it's incredible how Christmas as we know it, it's a real tapestry of traditions
Yeah.
woven together over centuries.
Yeah.
And we're going to explore not only the what of Christmas customs, but also the why. Like, what were people really thinking and feeling as they celebrated in these different ways?
Okay, so let's rewind way back, before Christmas carols and candy canes, to a time when midwinter celebrations were already in full swing. What's fascinating is that these early festivities, they had nothing to do with Christianity.
Exactly. Imagine a world without twinkling lights and decorated trees. For many ancient cultures, winter was a time of scarcity and uncertainty. The days were shortest, the nights longest, and people were huddled indoors, hoping to make it through to spring. It's no wonder they looked for reasons to celebrate, to find light and hope in the darkest time of the year.
So it was more than just a party, it was a way to cope with the harsh realities of winter. Tell me more about these ancient celebrations. What were some of the things people actually did?
Well, imagine Scandinavia, where the Norse celebrated Yule, a festival spanning the winter solstice, and stretching into January. They'd feast, drink, and burn massive Yule logs, believing each spark from the fire represented a new animal that would be born in the coming year. It was a way to connect with the natural world and ensure prosperity for the future.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful image. The flickering flames representing new life in the depths of winter. It makes you realize how deeply connected these celebrations were to the rhythms of nature. But not all midwinter traditions were about feasting and merriment, right?
You're right. In Norse mythology, the god Odin was said to make terrifying night flights during Yule, judging people and deciding their fates. So there was also an element of fear and uncertainty mixed in with the celebration.
It makes sense. Winter was a time when people felt vulnerable, at the mercy of the elements. Maybe these celebrations were a way to appease the gods, to ensure a safe passage through the dark months. But let's shift gears a bit. We've got these vibrant midwinter traditions in place, and then along comes Christianity. Why didn't early Christians immediately jump on the Christmas bandwagon?
That's a great question. The early church was actually much more focused on Easter, the resurrection of Jesus. It wasn't until the 4th century that church leaders decided to institute a holiday celebrating Jesus' birth.
And I'm guessing choosing the date for Christmas wasn't as simple as checking Jesus' birth certificate.
You got it. The Bible doesn't mention a specific date, which, as you'll see, becomes a point of contention later on. But in the 4th century, Pope Julius I declared that December 25th would be the official day to celebrate Christmas. Now, many historians believe this date was chosen strategically to coincide with existing pagan festivals like Saturnalia in Rome.
So the church was trying to, let's say, absorb these pagan traditions into Christianity. It seems like a pretty clever way to win over converts. What was Saturnalia like?
Saturnalia was a month-long festival in ancient Rome, honoring the god Saturn. Think of it as a time of complete social inversion. Normal rules were suspended, enslaved people were temporarily granted freedom, and everyone feasted and exchanged gifts. It was a time of release and celebration, even for those who were typically marginalized in Roman society.
A month-long party where societal norms were flipped upside down.
That's fascinating. Did this temporary freedom for enslaved people have any lasting impact on Roman society? Or was it just back to business as usual once the festival ended? That's a question historians still debate. It certainly speaks volumes about Roman society's awareness of social hierarchy, and even their implicit acknowledgement that it wasn't necessarily fair or just. But whether it led to any tangible changes in the long run is difficult to say. What is clear is that the church, by choosing December 25th for Christmas, was attempting to connect with deeply ingrained cultural practices.
But I have a feeling that things didn't quite go according to plan. Did the church manage to tame those wild midwinter celebrations once they became associated with Christmas?
Not exactly. In fact, medieval Christmas was known for its rowdiness. Think more Mardi Gras than Silent Night.
Right, really. Tell me more about that.
Imagine this: feasting, drinking, singing, dancing, all happening in churches and homes. They even had a lord of misrule, who was often chosen from the lower classes and given symbolic authority to turn the social order upside down.
So it sounds like those ancient traditions of social inversion were alive and well, even within the context of a Christian holiday. It makes you wonder how comfortable the church really was with all of this revelry.
Well, that's where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because Christmas, as you'll soon find out,
Yeah.
was in for a dramatic shift. In fact, there was a time when Christmas was actually canceled.
Canceled. Okay, you've got to tell me more about that. Who would even try to cancel Christmas?
Well, in the 17th century, a group known as the Puritans, led by Oliver Cromwell, rose to power in England. They saw Christmas as a pagan-infused celebration that had strayed too far from its religious roots. They condemned the feasting, drinking, and revelry as decadent and ungodly.
So they weren't exactly fans of the whole Lord of Misrule thing, huh? But did they actually succeed in banning Christmas?
They did. From 1647 to 1660, celebrating Christmas was outlawed in England. Shops and markets were ordered to stay open, and anyone caught engaging in festivities could face fines or punishment.
Wow, they are serious about this. I can't imagine trying to enforce a Christmas ban today. But what about the people? How did they react to having their holiday canceled?
There was a lot of resistance, especially from those who saw Christmas as a time for community and celebration. Regardless of religious connotations, some people continued to celebrate in secret, keeping the traditions alive in their homes.
It's a reminder that traditions are often deeply rooted in culture and identity, and people don't give them up easily, even under pressure. But the ban didn't last forever, right?
Correct. When the monarchy was restored in 1660, Christmas celebrations made a comeback, much to the relief of many. But by then, Christmas had already begun to evolve, moving away from the rowdiness of the medieval period towards a more subdued and family-oriented affair.
So even though the Puritans didn't manage to permanently cancel Christmas, they may have inadvertently nudged it in a new direction. But what about Christmas in America? We were founded by Puritans after all. Did they bring their anti-Christmas sentiments across the Atlantic?
Absolutely. The Pilgrims, those devout Puritans who landed at Plymouth Rock, brought their anti-Christmas belief with them. In fact, celebrating Christmas was actually illegal in Boston. From 1659 to 1681, you could be fined for exhibiting any Christmas cheer.
Yeah. Wow, that's some serious dedication to a Christmas-free existence. It seems like Christmas had a tough time taking root in America.
You're right. Even after the American Revolution, when English customs fell out of favor, Christmas still struggled to gain widespread acceptance. It wasn't until 1870 that Christmas was officially declared a federal holiday in the United States.
So how did Christmas go from being banned in some places to becoming the beloved national holiday it is today? Was it a gradual shift, or was there a specific turning point?
What's a fascinating story of reinvention and adaptation? You see, 19th century America was undergoing a period of rapid change and social upheaval. Industrialization was booming, cities were growing, and people were searching for a sense of unity and shared identity.
I guess amidst all that change, people might have craved the comfort and tradition that Christmas could offer, but who was the mastermind behind this Christmas revival?
The History.com article credits a rather unexpected figure, Washington Irving, the author of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Wait, the guy who wrote about a headless horseman also helped shape how we celebrate Christmas. How is that possible?
In 1819, Irving published a collection of stories called The Sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon, Gent. One of these stories described a heartwarming Christmas celebration at an idyllic English manor house, filled with traditions that, believe it or not, Irving largely made up.
So he basically created a fictionalized version of Christmas that resonated with people. It's like he wrote the script for the Christmas we know and love today. But why do you think his version of Christmas was so appealing to Americans at that time?
Irving's depiction of Christmas was a powerful antidote to the anxieties of the era. He presented a vision of social harmony, where people from all walks of life came together to celebrate in peace and unity. This resonated deeply with the nation, grappling with its own social divisions and the challenges of a rapidly changing world.
It's fascinating how a fictional story could have such a profound impact on real-life traditions. But Irving wasn't the only one weaving heartwarming Christmas tales, right? What about Charles Dickens and his iconic A Christmas Carol?
Yes. Published in 1843, Dickens' story took the world by storm. The tale of Ebenezer Scrooge's transformation, from miserly curmudgeon to generous benefactor, resonated deeply with readers on both sides of the Atlantic. It emphasized the importance of compassion, charity, and the true spirit of Christmas.
It seems like these authors, through their storytelling, helped to redefine Christmas, shifting the focus from the rowdiness of the past to a more heartwarming and family-centered celebration.
Precisely. Their stories, along with the influence of recent European immigrants, bringing their own Christmas customs, helped to shape a new, distinctly American Christmas.
So we see how Christmas was transformed through literature, social change, and cultural influences. But what about one of the most iconic figures of Christmas? Santa Claus. How did he evolve from a historical figure to the jolly gift-giving icon we know today?
That's a journey that takes us back to a real person, Saint Nicholas, a bishop who lived in Turkey. Around the 3rd century AD, he was known for his generosity, especially towards children, and became a beloved figure throughout Europe.
Wait, so Santa was a real person? I always thought he was a product of someone's imagination.
Well, St. Nicholas was indeed a real person, and his legacy of kindness and giving laid the foundation for the Santa Claus we know today. Over time, stories of his good deeds spread, blending with local folklore and traditions as they traveled across cultures.
So how did St. Nicholas transform into the red-suited reindeer-driving Santa we know and love today? Welcome back to our deep dive into the history of Christmas. It's amazing how this holiday, with its ancient roots and ever-evolving traditions, it still holds such a special place in our hearts. We've gone from pagan rituals to Puritan bans, from the rise of Santa to the influence of literary giants like Washington Irving and Charles Dickens. But there's still so much more to uncover. What about those other Christmas traditions we all know and love, like Christmas trees, carols, and all those delicious holiday treats?
You're right, there's a whole world of fascinating stories behind those seemingly simple traditions. For example, have you ever wondered where the tradition of decorating Christmas trees came from?
Honestly, I just assumed it had something to do with Santa and presents, but I'm guessing there's a deeper history there.
You bet there is. The evergreen tree has been a symbol of life and renewal in many cultures for centuries. In ancient Rome, they decorated their homes with evergreen boughs during Saturnalia, and in Northern Europe, long before Christianity. People revered evergreen trees as symbols of hope and perseverance during the long, dark winters.
So the idea of bringing evergreens into our homes during the winter has been around for a long time. But when did people start actually decorating them like we do today?
Well, the tradition of decorating Christmas trees as we know it is believed to have originated in 16th century Germany. The story goes that Martin Luther, the Protestant reformer, was walking home one night and was awestruck by the beauty of the stars. Twinkling through the branches of an evergreen tree, inspired, he brought a tree home and decorated it with candles to recreate that magical sight for his family.
So the first Christmas tree was basically inspired by a starry night. That's a pretty poetic origin story. But how did this German tradition spread to the rest of the world?
It took a while. The tradition remained primarily in Germany for several centuries. But in the 19th century, the Christmas tree gained popularity in England, thanks to Queen Victoria and her German husband, Prince Albert. And as we already discussed, many aspects of our modern Christmas celebrations were heavily influenced by English traditions in the 1800s.
So the Christmas tree's journey is a reminder of how traditions can travel across cultures and evolve over time. But it's not just the tree itself. What about all those decorations? Where did those come from?
Early Christmas tree decorations were often homemade, with families using fruits, nuts, and paper crafts to adorn their trees. Candles were a popular decoration too, but as you might imagine, they were a bit of a fire hazard.
I can see how electric lights might have been a welcome invention for Christmas tree enthusiasts. But what about those shiny baubles and sparkly ornaments we see everywhere today?
Those came along a bit later. In the late 19th century, mass-produced glass ornaments started becoming popular, thanks in part to the ingenuity of a German glassblower named Hans Greiner. He figured out how to create thin, lightweight glass ornaments that wouldn't break easily. And the rest, as they say, is history.
So from simple homemade decorations to mass-produced ornaments, the Christmas tree has seen its fair share of transformations. But there's another Christmas tradition I'm curious about: carols. Did people always gather around the piano singing Jingle Bells and Silent Night?
Not quite. Early Christmas carols were actually quite different from the ones we sing today. They were often religious in nature, sung in Latin, and performed primarily in churches. It wasn't until the Victorian era that carols became more popular among the general public.
I guess a Latin carol doesn't exactly have the same sing-along appeal as Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but what changed in the Victorian era that made carols so popular?
Well, several factors played a role. The printing press made sheet music more accessible. The rise of the middle class meant more people had leisure time and pianos in their homes. And a renewed interest in traditional customs led to a revival of caroling as a social activity.
So Christmas carols, like so many other traditions, evolved to reflect the changing times and cultural trends. It's incredible how these seemingly simple things have such rich and fascinating histories. But there's one aspect of Christmas we haven't touched on yet: the food. Did people always feast on turkey and gingerbread during the holidays?
The Christmas feast has a long and delicious history of its own. You see, in the Middle Ages, Christmas was celebrated for 12 days, culminating in a grand feast on Twelfth Night. This feast was a lavish affair, featuring all sorts of roasted meats, pies, and other delicacies.
12 days of feasting, that sounds a bit excessive even for me. But what were some of the specific foods people enjoyed back then?
Well, roasted boar's head was a popular centerpiece for the Christmas table. It was often decorated with rosemary and gilded apples, making it a truly impressive sight. Mince pies, filled with a mixture of fruit spices, and sometimes meat were also a staple of the medieval Christmas feast.
Meat in a pie. That's not exactly my cup of tea. But I can see how those rich and flavorful dishes would have been a welcome treat during the cold winter months. But how did the Christmas feast evolve into the meals we enjoy today?
Over time, Christmas traditions and recipes changed and adapted. Roasted goose became a popular alternative to boar's head, and eventually, in the 16th century, turkey rose to prominence as the centerpiece of the Christmas table.
I guess turkey was a bit more accessible than a boar's head. But what about those sweet treats we associate with Christmas, like gingerbread and candy canes? Where did those come from?
Gingerbread has a long and fascinating history, dating back to ancient Egypt and Greece. It was introduced to Europe by crusaders returning from the Middle East, and by the Middle Ages, it was a popular Christmas treat. Gingerbread houses, as we know them today, are believed to have originated in Germany in the 16th century, possibly inspired by the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel.
So even gingerbread houses have a connection to literature. And what about candy canes? Those seem like a pretty modern invention.
You might be surprised to learn that candy canes have been around for centuries. The exact origin is a bit murky, but the earliest mention of a candy cane dates back to 1670 in Germany. The traditional red and white stripes and peppermint flavor, however, didn't appear until the early 20th century.
Wow. It's amazing to think that something as simple as a candy cane has such a long history. But as we wrap up this deep dive into the history of Christmas, I think it's important to step back and consider what we've learned. We've seen how Christmas has evolved over time, from ancient pagan rituals to the commercialized holiday we know today. What does all of this tell us about this enduring celebration?
I think it highlights the remarkable resilience and adaptability of traditions. Christmas has been shaped and reshaped by countless cultural influences, historical events, and social changes. It's a testament to our human need for connection, celebration, and a sense of hope, especially during the darkest time of the year.
You're right. Whether we're gathering around a Christmas tree singing carols, or sharing a delicious meal with loved ones, we're participating in a tapestry of traditions woven together over centuries.
And as we look to the future, it's exciting to think about how Christmas might continue to evolve. Will we see new traditions emerge, perhaps inspired by technology or changing social values? Or will we find ourselves returning to the simpler, more heartfelt celebrations of the past?
It's a question worth pondering. But one thing is for sure, the core values of Christmas: generosity, kindness, and a sense of wonder. They're timeless and universal. They transcend cultural boundaries and historical periods, reminding us of the importance of connection, compassion, and hope, especially during the holiday season. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the history of Christmas. Be sure to check out the full article on history.com for even more fascinating details. Until next time, happy holidays.